The city skyline pierced the morning haze like ambition-piercing doubt. Buses hissed to a halt and people poured out, pressed suits, leather shoes, coffee in hand. Among them, Ella stepped down quietly, her worn boots thudding on the pavement. The hem of her cotton dress, clean but faded from years of careful washing, danced around her ankles as she adjusted the strap of her cloth bag, stitched by her mother's hands. She paused for a moment, staring up at the towering glass building. Its polished walls shimmered under the sun, almost mocking her reflection. Her heart thudded, not from fear, but from the weight of everything she carried, the dreams of a little girl who had studied by candlelight, the prayers of an old father still tilling soil, and the silent promise she made to herself years ago, that when she made it, she'd return dignity to people who looked like her. As she pushed open the glass doors, the receptionist barely hid her surprise. Ella caught the glance. The quick up-and-down scan of her boots, her simple braid, the absence of makeup or heels. She felt it all but didn't flinch. Inside, suited workers rushed past her, barely noticing. But Ella noticed everything. The expensive perfume. The marble floor. The invisible wall between them and her. Still, she smiled. She wasn't here to fit in. She was here to lead. And though no one knew it yet, the ground had just shifted, quietly, like boots on marble. The marble lobby buzzed with early morning chatter and the click of heels. Ella stood near the reception, quietly taking in the space, gleaming floors, abstract art, elevators that whispered shut like secrets. She felt eyes on her, curious and cold. A man in a sleek navy suit glanced her way, then smirked. "Deliveries around back," he said, loud enough for others to hear. A few chuckled. Another, younger employee leaned over to whisper but didn't bother lowering his voice. "She lost or something?" Ella said nothing. She only smiled, a soft, almost fragile curve of her lips. It wasn't a smile of agreement, it was grace. A woman in a pencil skirt walked past, paused, then opened her purse. "Here," she said, holding out a crumpled $10 bill. "You can get something to eat nearby." Ella looked at the note, then at the woman. She nodded politely, not taking the money. Inside, her heart ached, not for herself, but for how quickly people forgot the value of kindness. But she didn't flinch. Didn't correct them. The teachings of her mother echoed gently, "Your worth doesn't lower with their ignorance. Let your silence speak louder than their noise." So she waited. Not as a victim, but as someone who knew something they didn't, that judgment is loud, but truth is patient. The mocking smiles would fade. The whispers would fall silent. Because the woman they dismissed as lost was moments away from changing everything. The elevator chimed, its silver doors gliding open with a soft hush. Out stepped a tall man in his 60s, distinguished, warm-eyed, the company's longtime chairman. His gaze swept the room, then lit up the moment he saw her. "Ella," he called out, his voice echoing through the grand lobby. "You're early." "Excellent." Heads turned. The chuckles stopped. The woman with the dusty boots and cloth bag wasn't here to deliver anything, she was being greeted. Then came the words that rewrote everything. "Everyone, meet our new CEO." The lobby froze. Silence crashed down like thunder. Ella stepped forward gently, her step steady, her eyes soft as she looked at the same people who had mocked her just minutes ago. She didn't gloat. She didn't glare. She simply nodded, her expression calm, composed, gracious in a way that made people shrink in their own skin. The man in the navy suit swallowed hard. The woman with the $10 bill quietly slipped it back into her purse, her face flushed. Somewhere in the back, a young intern whispered under his breath, "I judged her." Realization cracked through the room like lightning. They hadn't just misjudged her clothes or her accent, they had missed the rare strength in her humility, the quiet brilliance in her silence. And now, the rural girl they laughed at would be leading them. But Ella wasn't there for revenge. She was there to show them what true leadership looks like, rooted not in pride, but in purpose. The conference room filled quickly. Whispers still buzzed in corners, eyes flicked curiously toward the front where Ella now stood, not in a power suit, but still in her simple dress and boots, like a living reminder of their earlier mistake. She looked out over the crowd, took a steady breath, and began. I grew up in a village where clean water was a privilege and dreams were a luxury, she said, her voice calm but unwavering. I walked 5 miles to school every day. Studied under flickering lamps. There were times when even food was uncertain, but my faith in the future never was. A hush settled over the room. No one looked at their phones. She continued, one day, a stranger saw me reading outside his shop and gave me a second-hand book. That act, small to him, changed my life. It made me believe that even the forgotten deserve a chance. Ella looked around, her eyes kind but firm. I didn't work hard to prove anyone wrong. I worked so I could open the door wider for those still standing outside. She smiled gently and closed with a line that would stay with them long after. Greatness isn't worn, it's lived. There was silence. Then, applause. Not polite, but powerful. Emotional. Eyes glistened. Heads bowed slightly, not in shame, but respect. The man who had mocked her the loudest approached her afterward, voice low, eyes sincere. Thank you, for your grace. Months had passed, but the energy in the office was different now, warmer, slower to judge, quicker to listen. New hires were no longer left to figure things out alone, they were mentored with care. Interns who once sat quietly at the edge of the table were now invited to speak, their ideas met with genuine interest. Respect no longer depended on suits, accents, or titles, it was earned through action, empathy, and integrity. At the center of this quiet revolution was Ella. She still walked the halls in the same weathered boots, the same calm presence. But now, those boots were more than footwear, they were a symbol. Not of rebellion, but of roots. Of purpose. Of remembering where you came from while lifting others up. Ella never needed to remind anyone who she was. Her leadership spoke for itself, measured not in words, but in the space she created for others to grow. One morning, a junior employee held the door open for a janitor and wished him a good day. Another offered to help a shy intern prep for her presentation. Small acts, barely noticed. But Ella noticed. She smiled as she watched from a distance. Kindness echoes. That was her legacy, not power, but transformation. Not fear, but dignity. Because in a world quick to judge the quiet ones, Ella proved something timeless. Never underestimate them. They're often the ones who rise. And bring everyone else with them. Ella simply nodded. Forgiveness had always been her quiet strength.